So let's talk about graphing. Graphing is an easy way for us to see the functions that we are working with. A function is a line in most cases or some sort of squiggly line, but we can use what's called a graph to draw out the function and help us understand its behavior better across all values of x. So in a graph, we have what's called an x-axis, which is this line here, and a y-axis, which is this line here. And when we're graphing for every value of x, right, like we did in the last lesson, we have a value of the function of x. So whenever we were plugging in, say, x equals 1, and the function was equal to 5, that would give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That would give us a point. And let's say we did x is equal to 2. So we're finding that in the function, and the function was equal to 4. We would have this point, and so on. If we did any point or any value of x and it gave us a point, that is a point on our function. And in this lesson, we're going to be working with linear functions, which are always just straight lines. So once you know 1 or 2 points of the function, you can just draw a straight line through those 2 points, and that will give you your function. But before we do that, let's just learn how to graph basic points. So how we write points is we write them as our x value, comma, and then what our f of x value is. So what this means is, say if we were given a point 1, 3, we would say, okay, the x value is 1, so we count from 0. This is 0, this point at the middle, and positive y goes up. That's easy to remember. Negative y goes down, positive y goes up. And then the hard part to remember is x, positive x goes right, and then negative x goes left. You'll just have to get used to that. Positive y, positive x, negative x. So here we're trying to find this point. We have 1 for the x value and 3 for the f of x value. And so we have 1 here, and we can count up 3 ticks. 1, 2, 3. And so that is this point graphed. But let's do a couple more points to get a feel for it. I'm just going to erase this. Okay, so let's say we wanted to do -2, +3, the point. So our x is -2, right? So you just count over 2 spaces to the left, 2 ticks on your x-axis. And then now for the y portion, or the f of x portion, excuse me, we need to count up +3. So here we have 1, 2, 3. Notice how I'm staying on x is -2. So I'm staying there. It's similar to the ships game, if you've ever played the ships board game. But we did -2, +3. So that is our point. Let's do another one. Let's say we wanted to do 0, 5. So what this means is our x component is 0, so we can just stay at x equals 0, and then we need to count up 5 on the y-axis. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's the point 0, 5. Okay, let's do a couple more points just to get a feel. Let's say we wanted to do -2, -2. So once again, our x value is -2, so we count over 2 ticks to the left, 1, 2, and then our y is also -2, so we need to count down the y-axis 2 ticks. So 1, see, we went down 1, 2. Okay, so this is our point. Once again, because it's 2 ticks to the left on the x-axis, and it's 2 ticks down on the y-axis. Let's do another one. Let's try -3 and 0. So what we do here is for our x, we count to the left 3 ticks, 1, 2, 3, and then our y is 0. So we don't need to move anywhere in the y direction. So that is our point, and that is how you graph points that are written in this format. Important things to remember, this here is called the x-axis, this one is called the y-axis, and 0 is at the center here. So whenever you're graphing a point, and you have a positive x, you need to move to the right. Negative x, you need to move to the left. So you can think of this as 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. -1, -2, -3, -4. And then for the y is easier because you can just remember y positive goes up, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then down here, -1, -2, -3, etc., all the way down. And so when you're graphing a point, you just count over and remember that this side of the comma is your x component, and then the other side is your y, or your f of x component. And that is how you graph points. So now, how do we graph functions? Well, in the last lesson, we learned how to get points out of functions by plugging in x values. And what we can do is just plug in 2 x values, and after that, because it's a linear function, which just means that it's a straight line, we can take those 2 points and draw a straight line through them. So let's do this for a function f of x is equal to x. So step 1 is we need to find 2 points. Let's just plug in f +1 and f -1 and see what comes out. So if we do f is 1, f is 1, we have, we can just substitute the x for 1. So f of 1 is equal to 1. So that's important. And remember, if you remember, we have a point is written like this. It's written our x, and then f of x. So from this we can get a point because we have the x value and we have the f of x value, which both are 1. So our point is 1, 1. Okay, so we have 1 point. Let's find another point. We can use any value, but for this example, I just used -1. You can use whatever value you're comfortable with. You can use 2, you can use anything, but I'm just using 1 for this example. So f of -1 is equal to, well, we just substitute x for -1, so we have our f of x is equal to -1. If we write it in point form, we have our x for this point is -1, and then our f of x value is also -1. So now that we have our 2 points, we can just go ahead and graph these points. Like we learned earlier in this lesson, we have 1 for our x, and then we have 1 for our y. So that's our first point right here. And then for our other point, we have x is equal to -1, and then our y component, or f of x component, is also -1. So we count down 1 in the y direction. Great. Now we have our 2 points. And so once we have 2 points with a linear function, aka we know it's a straight line, we can just take those 2 points. If you're doing this on paper, I recommend just grabbing a ruler and putting it against the 2 points so you can draw a straight line. But I'm just going to eyeball it. And then you put arrows on both ends because the function goes on forever. But that is our function, the graph of our function. Let's do another one to get more familiar with it. Okay, so here we have another linear function, and step 1 is just to find 2 points. So let's just plug in, x equals 2, and let's do x equals -2. I like to do a positive and a negative sometimes, just because when the points are really close together, like say if we did 1 and 2, then that would be hard to draw a straight line that goes all the way out because the points are so close together. Anyway, let's do x equals 2. So for our x equals 2, we can write this as f of 2. And then we're just going to substitute into the function. So -3 times our x is 2, right? So, and then -2. Now we can simplify this. So -3 times 2 gives us -6, -2, which gives us -8. So this is our f of x value, and then our x value is this here. So we can write a point. I'll write it below here. So a point is our x value, comma, and then our f of x value. Okay, so now let's do this down here, and I'm just going to draw a line here to keep everything clean so we can understand what's going on. F of -2 is equal to -3 times -2, and then -2 again. Let's simplify that. So -3 times -2 is +6, minus 2 gives us +4. So for this point, we have our x. Let's write a point. -2, and then our f of x, the value of our function, is equal to 4. Okay, so now that we have 2 points, we can go ahead and graph those 2 points, right? That's the next step. So let's graph this first point. We go 2 in the x direction and -8 in the y direction. Let's see if I even have enough ticks on this graph to do that. So 2 in the x direction, 1, 2, and then -8 in the y direction. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Look at that. Just enough ticks. And if you ever don't have enough ticks, you can draw more, or else find a smaller point that will give you a smaller x or y value. So we have our first point, and then our second point is -2 in the x direction and +4 in the y direction. So let's go ahead and do that. We have -2 in the x direction goes left, remember? So 1, 2, and then we have +4 in the y direction. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that is our other point. And then the final step in graphing a linear function is to just draw a straight line through both of our points. So this is kind of hard to eyeball, but you should do it with a ruler. and then just draw an arrow at both ends, and that is the graph of our function.
Hey guys, if this video has been helpful to you, click the link in the description to get access to the complete Easy STEM Algebra 1 system, which includes a textbook, homework, and all of the course videos in order.